In the previous episode, we adjusted the dado using scrap, explained where the dimensions were going to go and how they were going to be cut. In this episode, we switched to a rip fence and cut all the dado. So I ended up changing from using a miter fence to my rip fence for these dado cuts for the bottom, because what I want to do is I want to keep constant pressure with a hold down paddle so that the dado depth is constantly the same. That allowed me to move through at a steady pace and keep constant pressure on that. For me, how I did that was basically I rotated the powers off to the table saw. I rotated the wobbler dado cutter over to the tooth that was the farthest to the left. I measured it from here over to there to the fence, and that got my 1 3/4 inch, and then I backed the fence off ever so slight so I have just a little bit of clearance just in case, because I do not want the bottom above the rail, because the veneer is so thin that you can't sand it down, otherwise you'll get down to the substrate. So doing that, I end up with this extra cut here. This was the cut with painter's tape. You can see how the chip out was so bad on it. This was the cut without the painter's tape. So basically I ran through here like this, cut it like that, nice and slow, a lot slower than that, but did that, and then I took a sanding block and then I just kind of went down the edges like this inside the dado cut, once down and back on each side, which kind of took all the rough burrs out, and it allowed the pieces to slide together pretty easy. Here's another cabinet side. You can see this is unit 8. This is my top. This is my front. This is my bottom. And this overall is the outside because it's that darker grain. So this is the inside. This is where I want to put that dado in here at the bottom. And what you want to have is you want to have your material labeled like this so that you can just rip through without having to think, because like I said earlier, you don't want 2 lefts or 2 rights and stuff like that. When you have to stop and think, it takes more time and you're more prone to error. Here is I put my sacrificial fence on. I need to cut the rabbet along the back side of the sides, because what's going to happen is the back of the cabinet panel will slide down into there. In the case of mine, like most sheet goods, it's not exactly 1/4 inch, but I don't want it protruding beyond the back. I want it just a little bit below the back. Mine is 1/4 inch minus, just ever so slightly, maybe a fingernail thickness or so. What I'm going to do is I've set it at 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to go test fit a piece to see if it fits. I don't have any readily cut, so I have to actually take it out to my actual 4x8 sheet of stock to test fit it. Cut this to see if it fits, and then if we are, we'll rabbet the back side of each one of the sides. Different ways to, of course, make cabinets and stuff, and no particular way is the correct way. You just have to do whatever you feel comfortable doing. Some people will cut the rabbet first and then the dado. I do it just the opposite, because I find that when you're cross-cutting on this veneer, which is actually kind of, the grain pattern is going up and down, it chips out, as you can see from some of my previous clip. I had to sand off the little chip outs, but when you cross-cut across this and then you cut the rabbet, it helps clean that up, and this creates a really crisp corner. So I've got my rabbet on my test board and it fits. It's just a little proud, maybe a fingernail thickness deeper than the actual sheet good that's going to go on the back of this. So that's fine, because I don't want it rusting up against the wall directly anyway, for imperfections in the wall or whatever. Now what I'll do is, now that I'm all set up, I'll go ahead and rabbet the sides of each panel. Like before with our sides, I have the dados facing each other because those are the interior side of the cabinet. We want to do the back side of the interior, so it's important to make sure that you have your panels labeled, because see, like if I just run this one through, it'd be on the wrong side. I gotta flip it over. If I ran it exactly the way it is, I would have two left sides or two right sides. but there's my back. So not only do I need to flip it, I need to rotate it, but I'm only doing the back. Basically, you're creating a mirror image of the other one. So as you can see here, dado for the bottom panel, dado for the bottom panel, rabbet for the back panel, rabbet for the back panel. Essentially a mirror image or a bookmark image of that, of the side panels. Once I get all my rabbets cut, my next thing will be to tackle the dado up to the top. And I just want it just a little bit, maybe a 1/4 inch lower than the top, so it's behind the frame, but not butting right up against the top for sealing imperfections or whatever. So, and add extra gluing strength. I'll get the rest of these rabbets cut out for the back panel, and the smallest of my cabinets that I'm building are my uppers. Once again, I've got that little bit of a reveal on the face frame here, a little bit on the other side. The bottom here is flush on both sides, and it looks good. But now what you might notice is the bottom right here, because that new rabbet protrudes past the rabbet. Well, the easiest way to solve that is simply re-rip this bottom piece to account for that extra 1/4 inch, and that's what we'll do also. You can see this small cabinet here, which is 25.5 inches high by 12 inches deep, is starting to take shape piece by piece. We're getting closer and closer. We've only got several more steps to do. Putting the dado up here, we'll set it down a little bit on both sides, ripping the bottom so that it accounts for that new rabbet we just put on the sides, and then we'll have to do the joinery to attach the bottom and top to the sides, as well as the joinery to attach the carcass to the face frame and the back to the carcass as well. Before I do any of that attachment though, what we'll end up doing is we will actually put shelf pin holes in here, and I'll show how to do that a little bit later. So I did a test cut with my top rabbet, and I think I'm going to go with a 1/4 inch lip at the top. Some people flush it up. I'm going to go with a 1/4 inch. Allows for any sealing imperfections or anything abnormal with the sealing. This is essentially an entire side. Here's my bottom dado. Here's my top dado. Here's the under the cabinet hang. So this is the top of the face frame right here. This up here is just going to be where the top of the cabinet board goes in, and this is just going to be a little overhang that is completely trimmable or millable in case the ceiling is bad, because these are going clear to the ceiling. These are 42-inch cabinets. These are not 30-inch. If it was a 30-inch cabinet, I would probably take this dado just shy of the top. That way it's getting a little better contact and it's flat on top. But since these are going up against essentially the ceiling, coming up like this, on a little bit of a gap, just like the reasoning for having my little bit of reveal on the face frame. I don't want them butting into each other, banging into each other, so you can get square along the face frame and not have to worry about the external hole it's going into. In the case of this, I left a 1/4 inch instead of an 1/8 inch like I do on the frames. An 1/8 inch is a little too thin in my opinion. It can break off really easy, whereas a 1/4 inch is a little bit stronger, and it adds another little gluing surface here. So when I glue these up, I'll end up having a glue surface here, here, and then this backside here. And with today's glue being as strong as it is, it'll break the material before the glue joint breaks. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.